Hello everyone and welcome back to another CPD talk. I hope you've had a lovely new year and some good holidays and are back and ready to learn. So today we're going to be going through this talk on how to reflect efficiently and what is the point of reflecting on our work. If you've been working in the NHS for any period of time, by now I'm sure you are aware that reflections will haunt you constantly, whether it is because you're a member of the IBMS, so you have to reflect regularly for that, or you're a HCPC professional, so you have to have your CPD in order. Reflections come up quite a lot, but something that I have noticed is a lot of people don't have any training in how to actually perform these reflections. So sometimes you'll get people that are trying to reflect but just not quite hitting the mark. So the point of this presentation is basically to go through what good reflection is, what bad reflection is, and basically learn from it. So we're reflecting on reflecting, here for all the fun. So let's get started. What we're going to cover today. Firstly, what is reflective learning? There is a worksheet to go alongside this, so at several points throughout the PowerPoint we're going to be stopping so you can do some stuff on that and then coming back. Then we're going to go through why we participate in reflections. We're going to go through some examples. You're going to get to go back to the worksheet and then we're going to summarise. So hopefully this will be a nice quick presentation just to make some things clearer in everyone's mind about the point of reflective learning. Right. So what is reflective learning? Reflective learning is basically taking a scenario or something that's happened in your day-to-day life and having a look at how you can implement what you've learned from that into your work life and how that can be used to help improve the experience of service users. Having gone through that very, very quick and short piece of work, if you could pause this PowerPoint presentation and this talk and try to answer questions 1 to 3 in the document that accompanies this talk. So that's com.pat.9. Again, I'll make sure that the document number is linked in the description below. You only need to go to question number 3 because we're going to revisit the rest of the questions after this. So if you pause the presentation now. Great, let's move on. So, why do we participate in reflections? By reflecting on our practice, it allows us to look at situations or learning in a way that we may not have done originally. It reaffirms the learning that we have undertaken, and it allows us to look at how this can be applied to our everyday practice. For example, if you've attended a day-long course, it is easy to only focus on the points that you found particularly interesting. However, by looking back and reflecting on this, you could discover that a different section of the talk actually can impact the way that you should be working. So it can bring to light pieces of information that you may not have seen as relevant initially, as well as obviously helping you to really solidify the knowledge that you have gained from that talk in your mind. Now, how do we reflect? The process of reflection is not complicated, but I think a lot of people find it very difficult. When you start training and learning in the sciences, you are taught that it's the data that should speak for itself and that our opinions are not ones that we should bring into our writing, whereas a reflection is very different because you're looking at your experiences and your opinions. So a lot of people really struggle with this when they first have to start reflecting. I know I really hated it. So let's just go through some simple questions that we should be asking ourselves when we are reflecting on a task or something we've learned. So, focusing on the task you want to reflect on, ask yourself, how does performing or not performing the task / performing the task ineffectively impact on the service user? So if you weren't to perform the task that you did perform, could this cause issues? Or if you were to perform it badly, it's all about bringing it back to the service user and how that's going to impact them. So something that may seem like a very boring menial task, like, I don't know, wiping down the sides in the lab, you may think, how could that end up going back to the service user? but actually you could end up with contamination on some other piece of work, which could then make it invalid. You know, there's always a way that what we're doing in the lab will relate back to that person who is using our service at the end of the day. Why have you completed the task? So that's kind of taking you back to the first bullet point, but it may bring in extra bits of information. So if we're still looking at cleaning the bench, you're doing it for hygiene reasons, right? What have you learned from the task? How will you apply this learning in your work? And are there any procedures that could be altered to align or improve from this learning? So this last bullet point is more to do with if you go on a course or if you go and visit a different lab and you see that they are doing something that you think could impact and improve the service. If you're able to reflect on that and provide good evidence, then you can bring that to a senior member of staff's attention, and it could be something that's ultimately implemented in the way that we work. One of the great things about working in the health industry is that it is always changing, and we have to be changing to keep up with this. So if there is something you see that we might not be doing to the best standard, it is always of the utmost importance that you bring this to our attention. So that's the basics. Wasn't very long, very quick, got through that super duper fast. What I would like you to do is answer the rest of the questions on your worksheet until you get to the question that says to give feedback on the examples in the presentation. Once you've got to this question, restart this YouTube video or presentation, and we will go through the examples. I will pause it again, and then you can add in what you think, what your opinions are on these reflective pieces of learning. So, example number 1. You've got a member of staff that is reflecting on their completion of a competency. They have put on there that it says, I am fully aware of the storage requirements of blood and blood components, RBC 4 plus or minus 2, platelets 22 degrees plus or minus 2, FFP below minus 25 degrees. So what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is a good reflective piece of work, or do you think it could be improved upon? Example 2. This is a reflection performed as a result of an error that the member of staff was involved in. So the details of the error are on the top bit. So it was, upon completing the anti-D list for the 3rd of September, 2 patient demographics were incorrectly entered into APEX, creating duplicate records. And then it has the relating incident numbers. The member of staff has then done the reflection below. On the day that I completed these, I started the anti-D list, and then the massive blood loss bleep went off. I ended up having to deal with a massive blood loss and some full cross matches at the same time. Whilst I did stop performing the anti-D list at the time, because I did not want to half complete the job, I ended up rushing to complete this once the massive blood loss had calmed down. As a result of this, I was not as thorough with my checks as I should have been when I issued the prophylactic anti-D. I think it's a great idea to have 2 people involved in the process, as it gives the opportunity for 2 people to spot the errors. But in future, I will try to slow down to ensure that I have correctly completed the list and not caused any issues for the patients by delaying transfusions / causing right blood, right patient type errors. Example number 3. So this is taken from the IBMS website when you enter your CPD and reflect on it. So it's in a little bit of a different format, but it's a reflection on the participation in a PP.PAT workshop. So you can see at the top it has when it was and what type of learning it was. Then it has the reflective notes. So what learning did you undertake? I participated in a PP.PAT-based workshop to aid members of staff in their pipetting skills. Explain what you have learned or achieved. I learned about the different viscosities of liquids and how these affect the methods used for pipetting. In BT, the viscosity is not something that changes with reagents / samples that we have to pipette, so it was not an issue that I've had to deal with before. How have you applied this in your day-to-day practice? I have ensured that I pay closer attention to my pipetting technique and therefore I'm pipetting more accurately. How could this benefit the service user? Ensuring correct pipetting techniques are implemented means that any samples that require manual testings will get more accurate results. reducing the risks of weak antibodies being missed. Comments. This was a useful practical experience, however it would have been more use to me if the workshop discussed having to go into one medium to get to another, so obtaining packed red cells, and how to avoid the plasma that would be left on the pipette tip from interfering with the results. It would have been nice to have some information on this. So you can see in this one, the main difference is that there are those headings that help to jog the person who's reflecting to reflect down the right avenues and give the right information. And finally, example number 4, health roster training. So this is on the same sort of format as before. Reflective notes. What learning did you undertake? I attended a course on the use of health roster and online rostering system used within the trust to allow shifts, leaves and sickness to be recorded. I learned how to record shifts, leave, sickness and overtime, how to look at rosters, submit rosters for approval, the importance of keeping skills up to date, and the overall management of the system. I also learned about the importance of recording data at the time and keeping the information up to date. I'm being set up on the system on Friday. This will allow me to be able to check when people are in or not, whether they are on annual leave or whether they need to be contacted. This will ensure that people who require contacting are done so in a timely manner. It also means that when I get further leave requests, I can check who is already off to ensure that I do not end up with too many people off at the same time. Good management of staff and rotas ensures the laboratory has the correct number of workers to the workload. This will reduce staff sickness due to stress and ensure that our turnaround times are kept to a higher standard, meaning that service users will get their results back in a more timely manner. Okay, so that is all of the examples. So if you complete your thoughts on that, obviously you can rewind this video if you want to go back and have another look at them, and then start the video again. Right, so example number 1, it's not a reflective piece of work. It's a statement saying that they are aware of something. There's no reflection there. They haven't mentioned why they need to do it, what impact this has if it hasn't been done in this matter, how the competency will impact their behaviour. It's really just someone is trying to fill in a box to get it done. It's not a very good reflective piece of work, and it does not show understanding. It's just like they've copied and pasted some information, really. Example number 2. This is reflective. The person who completed it explained what happened. They explained how their actions could impact the service user, involved a positive change to the procedure to prevent further errors, and have reflected on how they will alter their practice. So you can see all of that information in just a couple of sentences. Example 3. This is an interesting one because there's not that much information there, but because the IBMS have set out their reflections in that manner and they have put those different headings, it's meant that this person has still reflected. They've still got most of the information you need to count it as a reflective piece of work. And this is why our sheet on QPulse matches the same headings, is so that you are thinking in the right mindset to be doing reflective practice. And finally, example number 4, again, it's a good piece of reflective work. It's longer than the previous one. It has a bit more information, which helps with the bulking it out. And it's still answering the exact same questions. Right. Hopefully, now you can see what makes a good piece of reflective writing. You will be able to complete the final question on the worksheet. That is it for the presentation though. Honestly, reflections are pretty straightforward once you know what you're doing. It's just sticking to those, asking yourself the correct questions over and over again about the topic or the procedure that you have learnt about. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to the next time. Bye!